Welcome to Ageless Jiu-Jitsu Gi Bottom Position. My intention in this video series is to show how older or less athletic Jiu-Jitsu students can still be highly effective against younger, fitter opponents. In this video, we look in detail at playing from bottom position in the gi. The major theme we always come back to is that older and less athletic players must be able to form effective connection to faster, fitter, younger opponents that enables them to slow the match down by restricting movement. As an older athlete, if you can control an opponent's movement and speed, then you can prevail. The good news is that the gi, by its very nature, offers far greater ability to slow movement than no gi apparel. First, it creates far greater friction between the two athletes, and second, it offers far more grips, and in addition, grips which are much more robust than are possible without the gi. In this video, I show how these simple grips can greatly improve your ability to restrain, restrict, and slow your opponent's movement and lead into moves that can take you to victory. As with all the videos in the Ageless series, we will restrict ourselves to moves that do not require any exceptional flexibility, strength, speed, mobility, or explosiveness in order to apply. All of the moves have been selected due to their ease of execution by players who are older in years or don't come from an athletic background, but which are nonetheless proven to be highly effective even at the highest levels against the toughest opponents. I will cover every aspect of the bottom game, everything from pulling guard safely from standing position to getting out of bad pins and working your way back into winning positions and submission holds. The central theme of this video will be how to funnel the action from bottom position into a few key positions: half guard, X guard, and close guard that maximize body contact and connection, and thus allow you to slow down younger, faster, and more athletic opponents, and then how to win from these positions. As always, we assert that the last thing an aging athlete loses is isometric strength, in particular, grip strength. And so, the basis of the older, less athletic player's submission game in the gi should be based around collar strangles. I focus primarily on what I believe is the single most effective collar strangle from bottom position in the gi. This is Jiu-Jitsu, or the cross collar strangle. With all this in mind, let's get started now. Now, this video is all about the idea of working in a gi from bottom position. We're going to start standing and how to pull someone into guard play. So we go from a standing start, pulling your opponent down into a situation where you're on the ground underneath your opponent. We're going to look at the idea of what's the most efficient way we can do this. In Jiu-Jitsu 101, you're often taught to jump into the guard. You both start standing, you come out, you literally jump on your opponent. I've always believed this is a bad way of doing things, even for young athletic people. When you're older, this is a potential disaster. So I'm going to urge you to stay away from that kind of thing. Instead, we're going to look at efficient ways to not only pull someone down to the ground with us in bottom position, but also to immediately get on the attack so we can convert it rapidly to top position. These are my favorite ways to pull someone down that take very little effort, very little risk, and they often result in you being able to get an immediate reversal once your body touches the ground underneath your opponent. So we're going to start off with the idea of pulling into ashi garami. Okay, we're going to assume if we want to pull guard that we're doing so for a reason. And that reason is usually because you feel your opponent's got better skills than you in the standing position. Let's say, for example, they're better at grip fighting than you are. They've got better takedowns and throws than you do. And so we want to go to the ground as quickly and as efficiently as possible with the least amount of risk, least amount of effort, and potentially have some kind of reward having made this choice. One of the best ways we can do this is courtesy of ashi garami. So we're going to come out and give our training partner a grip. As soon as he makes his grip, we're going to go through and take our own grip. The grip we're going to get here is the seam that runs down the back of every sleeve. We're going to get a good grip. That's a good pulling grip to work with. Okay. Now we're going to go in and get our second grip. Our second grip, we're going to have to fight past our opponent's hand. So the first thing we're going to do is take his hand out of the way. And then from this situation, we're going to take our hands and lock right there on our training partner's lapel. As soon as we get that lapel grip, my right foot is going to step across in front of his right foot. And we're going to start a big circling action that makes Brian take a big step to follow us. just like so. Now I'm going to step back in towards my training partner. I'm going to take my right foot, I'm going to put it just inside his left foot like so. As I do this, I lower my level just a little. Then from here, I'm going to sit, and I'm just going to pull my training partner around. So they take one step, and the hand goes briefly to the mat. And now we're in ashi garami. We're connected to our training partner. I have good upper body grips, and I have a firm connection to his legs through my legs. So when he goes to move around from here, you're well connected to him. Okay? What we want to avoid is situations where we, as an older, slower, less athletic player, come out and then they can quickly get grips on us and quickly blast past our guard before we can even begin to play. Okay? When you sit down without connection, that's exactly what can happen. If they're younger and faster than you, and you sit down with no connection, they can just go straight past your legs right off the guard pole. So let's look at how things might go wrong for an older athlete. Okay, if I come in and I just sit in here and they just blast straight past my legs. Or if I try to put a foot in their stomach and they just quickly push past my legs, and you end up with a disastrous guard pull. So what we want to do is start off with some kind of firm connection to them. So we're going to offer them a grip and then get our own grip, just like so. Notice how we get a good pulling grip on the seam that runs down the back of every sleeve. Don't just grab anywhere on their sleeve. Make sure you grab correctly. The way we like to do this is take our hand to the body first and then the cloth second. Don't just try to grab straight to the cloth. Go body, cloth. Now, second hand goes in and we get a hold of our training partner's lapel. So my hand comes in, touches the body first, and then takes the lapel. Once we've done that, we start moving across our training partner's body. We take a big circling step that draws them in with us. Then we put our head right there in our training partner's shoulders. We step in 1, 2. We force them to take that big step. So we have that good ashi garami connection, just then like so. When he tries to posture up, it won't be easy. And the more he tries to posture up, the easier it'll be for us to knock this guy straight backwards. Okay? So, having a look at all this again. Training partner comes out, he gets his grip, we get ours. Fix up our grip, like so, on the seam that runs down the back of every sleeve. From here, I've got to fight my way through his grips, so we often have to take his hand out of contention and then fight to get our own grip in place. Now we start that circling action that draws our training partner around the corner as many times as it takes to separate his feet. Now we come in 1, 2, and he takes the step 3. From here, when he tries to posture up, it's not so easy. As he fights to break my grip, he leaves his legs behind. As a result, we can knock him straight down to the mat. As soon as he goes to the mat, circles behind. We're going to take our hand and we're going to cross grip our training partner's pants right here. Remember, guys, you're not allowed to put your fingers inside, so we have to work here. Once we get to this position, we're going to heist. As Brian tries to come up with me, he finds himself in a very compromised position. And then from here, we can just run him down to the mat, and we end up with a nice top position, starting from underneath. So let's have a look at all that again. Training partner comes out, he makes his grip, and we fix up our own grip. We get through and lock. We make this guy take a big step. Then, when we step in, we go towards his foot. Then a big step makes him step, like so. As soon as he goes to recover the position, he's fighting against the resistance of our hands, and then my hand just comes down to my own buttocks. And as he breaks the grip, he loses his balance. We grip and heist. And then from here, we're in the perfect position to walk this guy down to the mat. Very low impact way of pulling guard that has a great result. You end up in top position despite sitting down to bottom position. Now let's talk a little about sitting into ashi garami. Just spread your face, Brian. Okay. What I don't want to do is step straight in. Okay. I don't want to go here. See, the guys can end up on top of it. They push the knee through. You can end up in bad situations. Even worse, even if the guy doesn't step over, if he just stays stationary, it can be hard for me to hook his leg properly. You can see I can't really get my ashi garami. I didn't penetrate through far enough. And if I go straight in, I do penetrate through, he might just jump over my knees and end up in good position. So none of that's any good. So what we need to do is circle our way through. So you'll notice I make him take a step, and then I step in and my head moves across. Just make a strong base grind. So what I want to do is I want to fall across his legs to the greatest degree possible. So I just throw my leg through this way and I fall across his body. I don't want to land here. I want to land out here. And this is what makes it easy for my leg to come up into a good position. So watch my head. My head does not go straight backwards in a straight line. Rather, I fall towards this foot. So once I come in here, my head falls this way. That's what makes him take the big step. Then when my legs come up, they go easily into the ashi garami position. So putting all this together, training partner comes out. He makes his grip and we make our grip, fixing up that seam that runs down the back of every sleeve. We get a hold of our training partner's lapel. We make him take a big step so that his feet start to come apart. We circle and pull. Now we're side on. We step in 1, 2. 1, 2. Then we fall over to the side and we're right there in that perfect ashi garami. When I say it's perfect, I mean his balance is broken forward and his hand is on the mat. That's how you know you've done a good job of breaking your opponent's balance. So once again, with my back to the camera, watch Brian's left hand. He's currently gripped up to me. When we step in, you'll see his left hand has to go to the mat for balance. That's what we're looking for. Now, as he fights to regain balance, that's when he gets distracted and easily taken over. So putting all this in a context. Set ready. First come out to grip with each other. As we start off the grip fight battle, we go through, we get our first grip in place like so. Now we fight to get our second grip, and then it's always about that movement, get some stepping. Then we just step in 1, 2, and there's that good ashi garami connection, and then a knockdown to the mat. And immediately we go to stand up, gripping in like so. As he goes up, finds himself compromised. Worst case scenario, you get the ashi garami but can't get top position, no problem, you're an open guard. So once we get this guy stepping, and we step to the ashi garami, if I should try to knock him down and fail, no problem. Well, we're back in open guard and we're ready to play from there, as we'll see later on in this video. So this is a very practical and simple way to get a good result from open guard, from ashi garami, pulling from standing position. Now, we're looking at the skill of working from bottom position for older, less athletic players when we're working with the gi on. The first skill we need to be able to do is to draw someone from a standing position down to the ground. What we're trying to do in this video is give you a set of methods of pulling the fight down to the ground that take no athleticism, very low risk, very low impact, very easy on your body, aren't going to hurt you or your training partner, but which nonetheless give you a pretty good result. They give you an honest chance at actually sweeping your opponent off the guard pole. Okay, if we can't sweep our opponent, then we end up in open guard, we'll play from there, that's fine. But they do give you an honest chance at actually pulling them and then immediately sweeping them and getting top position. So we just looked at the idea of pulling into ashi garami. Now let's look at a closely related technique, pulling into X guard. Okay, when we go to pull into X guard, typically I'll do this off a one-handed grip, okay? Normally, for pulling ashi garami, we'll typically go two-handed grips. For this one, we'll go with a one-handed grip. I like to take a cross grip on my training partner, just like so. It doesn't have to be a particularly high grip, but just goes in around the front deltoid area, just like so. Okay, so how are we going to do this? We're going to come out towards our training partner. We're going to start a hand fight upstairs like so. From the hand fight, we're going to go straight in. We're just going to go in and lock. Okay, now the good news is, taking cross grips is generally much easier than taking straight grips because the fingers penetrate straight through right from the start. When you go for straight grips, your fingers have to fight to go in to get the lapel. Cross gripping is typically much easier because the fingers go straight in and get your grips, okay? So once again, start off in front of our training partners. We start off with a basic grip fight. We fight our way in and get our first grip. Now, we're going to start by pulling our training partner's leg forward and squaring this guy up. I'm going to step my foot just inside his foot. As I do this, my second hand is going to reach here inside my training partner's leg. I just take the back of my hand and I touch the inside of his knee. So my foot steps and the back of my hand goes in. Now I'm going to baseball slide towards my own foot. And as a result, I can make this guy take a step and force his hands to the mat. You already have your grip with your hands. Now our foot goes into place. We find ourselves in the classic X-guard. Byron, if you could just stand up for a second. Classic X-guard. Your foot is right there by the hip, other foot behind the knee. You still have a hold on your training partner's lapel like so. So when he tries to posture up, it's exceptionally difficult for him to even take his foot off the mat. Okay, so he's completely unstable in this position. As he goes to fight for his balance and work his way back up, it's the easiest thing for us to trip this guy down to the mat and end up on top. So once again, we'll get that forwards-backwards reaction. It sets up an immediate reversal. From the standing position, as we come out with our training partner, we fire our hand in and start the action of pulling this guy around the corner. Now from here, I step my foot just inside my training partner's foot, and the back of my hand goes just inside my training partner's knee. When I fall, I don't fall straight back. Again, I fall across his body. So the fall is one out here to the side that forces his hands down to the mat. And as a result, our feet go quite easily into good attacking position. As this guy fights his way back up to the feet, he gets easily destabilized to the back. And as a result, we end up on top in great position to attack. We're starting to see some common themes here. The idea that when we fall, we don't want to fall straight back in straight lines. Rather, we want to fall across the body. So this is where we want to go in, with your foot on the inside of his legs. The other big theme, when we fall in these positions, we want to get his hands down to the mat, okay, as soon as possible. So let's have a look at all this again. From a standing start, we come out with our training partner, and we see an opportunity to fire that initial hand in. I step and make him take a step. Now I step inside his legs, and we scoop grip and make that guy take the big step that off-balances him. From this position, our legs go right up into place. As he goes to fight my hands off, my foot goes from his knee down to his ankle. And as I lose my left hand, he loses his balance. And from here, we're in the perfect position to get up on top. From another angle, we start off in front of our training partner. We fire the first hand in, and we start moving this guy. From this position, we just step all the way inside and knock this guy straight down to the mat. Feet go in. As he fights off the grip, we come up on top and looking good. So this is a very practical way to take it effortlessly down to the ground with minimum fuss and bother that can actually get you a very good result. Again, as we said earlier, if you don't get the optimal result and your opponent gets pulled down to X-guard but you cannot knock him over, it's still not a bad thing. You just end up in an open guard. So worst case scenario, I sit down into X-guard and I try to sweep him, fail, we're still in X-guard. We're still in a pretty good position to work here. Okay, and from here we can play all our usual tricks from X-guard to get this guy on balance in various kinds of ways. So worst case scenario, you don't get top position, you successfully pull your opponent down to the bottom position, and you can work from open guard. We're going through the idea of pulling our opponent down to the ground so that we end up in bottom position, pulling to guard, and getting something out of it. The key themes that we're looking at, we want a method of pulling an opponent down from the standing position to the ground, which is very low impact. You don't want something where you jump in on people where you could injure the other person or injure yourself. It has to be low impact. It has to be relatively simple technically, because we're assuming our motivation for pulling guard is that the other guy's better than us in the standing position. So presumably he's better at gripping, he's got better throws, better takedowns, etc., better stance overall. So we want something we can get to your grips and quickly and easily pull him down to the ground. And we're looking for a bonus element too, the idea that we get some kind of off-balancing where you break your opponent's stance, force him to put a hand on the mat, and because his stance and balance has been broken, you're going to get a momentary chance to attack right off the guard pull, where you might get a sweep, a reversal, or even a submission as your opponent tries to recover balance. Worst case scenario, The guy recovers his balance, and you find yourself now in open guard, and then you're ready to use all the techniques that we'll be looking at throughout the rest of this video. But initially, we want a safe, efficient way to just drag someone down to the ground and get off to a good start. Now, another good way for us to do this is to pull our opponent into a double elevator. The double elevator method is highly effective in competitive situations. However, it is a little ugly and scrappy looking compared with the two methods we've looked at so far. So, what is a pull to a double elevator? We're going to do this one out of double lapel grips. Normally, when we sit to guard, we're gripping at least one of our training partner's sleeves, or we're cross gripping up like so. Not this time. We're going to come out towards our training partner, and we're going to go through, and we're going to get double lapel grips. Okay, I don't care what he does with his hands, it's up to him. You don't really control that. But I want two hands here like so. It's kind of a messy looking grip, but it's very effective for what we're about to do. I also want to square my training partner up. So I'm just going to moving and pulling him like so that I separate his feet. I'm going to step one of my legs between my training partner's legs, and my head comes down in front of my own fist, just like so. As I make my first step, I'm going to pull my body in. I'm going to lift our training partner so we force his hands down to the mat in this messy looking position like so. From positions like this, his stance is kind of broken. He has to try and recover from here. But recovery is not so easy. There's many things we can do in terms of moving this guy around the mat now. To off balance people, drag them down, get them into armbar situations, etc., etc. Anytime guys plant their hands on the mat to recover their balance, their stance is broken, and it's easy for us to start swimming inside. So many things for us to do. Once we get those hands on the mat, there's all kinds of things you can do in terms of taking people's bags, etc., etc. Okay? So if we can get this guy overreaching and committed to the mat, you're going to be able to use that extended arms, hands on the floor to attack them. So as we come out towards our training partner, we go through, we fix up our first grip. As we play in the standing position, our second grip goes on, and then we just step inside our training partner's legs. As we make that step, we come lift and get them out of balance. As they go into recover balance, that's exactly when we go on the attack. You've got a ton of ways to underhook your opponent, a ton of ways to come up and start working from half guard, etc., etc. Okay, it's a very, very practical way to drag someone down, break their stance, and get underneath their arms into good attacking positions. So once again, from a standing start, as we lock up with our training partner, we see an opportunity with our first grip. As we work from in here, we get our second grip. Now we just step and get this guy completely out of balance. And from these kinds of situations, that's where we can start to go to work. No matter how we land in these situations, there's going to be some degree of advantage to it. Okay, it's not difficult from here to go through into the various other kinds of attacks that we saw earlier as well. Many of the guards that we looked at will be readily available out of this double elevated guard pull. Again, anytime you get hands on the mat with arms spread, it's going to be relatively easy for you to attack. From standing position, lapel feed. Second hand goes on, separate his feet, step 1, 2, and there we have it. His stance is broken, and he's ready to be attacked in numerous different ways from this position. Okay? A very simple and very effective way to drag it down to the mat with advantage for you. We've looked at the idea of pulling someone down into a guard position from standing. Now, ideally, we'd like to be able to pull them down in the manners we described and then immediately sweep them and get on top. That's our dream, that's our goal. But we've got to be realistic, guys. 9 times out of 10, when you pull someone down to close guard, they resist strongly, and you have to fight now from bottom position. Now, that's exactly what this whole video is about. Don't worry, there's a dozen things you can do and many dozens of things you can do to be effective from bottom position. We'll be looking at a whole bunch of them. But the first thing you've got to be able to do is you have to be able to retain a guard long enough in the bottom position in order to be able to enact the various techniques that we show here in this video. It won't do you any good for me to show you a bunch of effective techniques if you can't just hold guard long enough to actually make them work. So your first skill from bottom position is always going to be retaining guard so that you can hold guard position long enough to make the techniques we look at later on in the video actually have enough time to work effectively. Now, if there's one area where I see older athletes struggle the most against younger, fitter, faster, more explosive athletes, it's exactly in the area of guard retention. The most likely way in which an older athlete or a less mobile or less athletic athlete is going to get blitzed by a younger, faster, more athletic rival is exactly in a situation where you find yourself in an open guard, you have no contact with him, and he can utilize his speed advantage over you. So, Brian, I think you're about a decade younger than me, so he's definitely got the age advantage on me here. Watch how he blitzes past me. Okay, if I have no contact on Brian, okay, no contact, this is exactly the kind of area where without contact, I can't slow this guy down. Okay, and if I can't slow a younger, faster, more explosive athlete, it's never a good thing. And he just touches and goes and straight past you, like, oh no, and you're past. Okay, if I see among my older students in the gym an area where they struggle the most against younger, fitter, more explosive athletes, it's exactly in that area where they have no contact and the guy just quickly gets a grip and you're past. Okay, that's where their speed advantage counts the most because you have no connection to them whatsoever. That's where you're most likely to be beaten by the younger, fitter, more athletic opponent. So our goal in this video is to avoid those situations as much as possible. We want the exact opposite. We want to maximize contact between ourselves and our opponent. Now, when it comes to guard retention, if I'm coaching young, competitive athletes, the three movements that you associate the most with guard retention all involve a fairly high degree of mobility. Okay, so for example, one very, very common form of movement with regards to guard retention is high leg movement. When an opponent moves to an angle, we put up post, moves to an angle, and from here we use a high leg where we bring our butt up off the ground, the legs come across, and from here we pull our whole body around the corner and go back to face our opponent. So every time this guy moves to an angle, we have to use that high leg motion where our leg comes up high. We have to show some degree of flexibility here and put this guy back in guard. Okay. The second most common physical movement involved with guard retention is inversion. So, for example, if Brian goes all the way through the north-south position, and then from here I'm expected to throw my whole body out, come around and face my opponent out of the inversion position and come back in. Every time this guy comes around the corner, we're supposed to throw our body up and over, invert, and put this guy back in guard. And the third most common movement is that of rolling. An opponent comes down to two knees, starts to come in. We want to get knee and shoulder in, roll through, and put this guy back in guard position. Okay, so those movements, inversion, rolling, and high leg, are three of the core movements which enable young, gifted, athletic, competitive athletes to retain guard against resistance. Then when you're coaching people who are older or have no athletic background whatsoever, they often struggle to retain guard using those movements. They often find they come in a day late and a dollar short, and they try the roll, they're a little bit slow, and the guy just blasts through and passes. So what I've found over the years is that the three core movements for athletically gifted people typically don't work well for older or less athletic players. So what should we do instead? Well, we have to base everything when it comes to guard retention on the notion of connection. There are three kinds of connection, which as an older or less athletic athlete, I want you to focus on. The first is feet to shoulders. We'll be looking at this in more detail soon, but so I'm just going to throw the broad picture at you first. The idea is that if I get a hold of my training partner's hands, if I can get my feet to my training partner's shoulders, that forms a connection to our opponent, where regardless of which side we're on, when he goes to move to an angle now, you're connected to him. When he goes to throw your legs around, get your grips on. From here, when he goes to throw legs around, as long as I can keep my feet in front of my training partner's shoulders, we're connected to him in a way where it's going to be hard for him to pass our guard. Okay, and we can keep our legs at an angle where, as long as I dominate the space inside his shoulders with the outside blades of my feet, I'm connected to him. When he tries to find angle, I don't have to get into any kind of convoluted rolling, high legging, inversion, or anything like that. Every time he goes to move, you're connected to him. If he goes side to side, you're in the perfect position to hold up and find yourself connected in a way where it's going to be very hard for him to pass as long as your feet occupy that position in front of his shoulders. Okay? So that's the first kind of connection. Don't worry, we'll be going over that in more detail soon. But that's your first big picture. The second kind of connection that I want you to focus on, this one is particularly important for older athletes, is to dominate the space between his elbows. This is the aspect of guard retention that very few people talk about. Most people focus on the leg work of guard retention. That's natural because that's the thing you see the most with your eyes. But the secret ingredient to guard retention, especially for older athletes who don't have very mobile legs, is to dominate the space between my opponent's elbows. And if you can do this, it's going to be hell for your opponent to pass you guard. And you will be effective at retaining guard even if you don't have good body mobility overall. So, for example, if Brian is going into a pass, and I see him coming around the corner, as long as I keep my elbow inside his, as long as I can keep my knee inside the opposite elbow, when Brian goes to pass, he can go all the way down to the floor and can do whatever he wants. I'll always be able to move back inside him, as long as I have space between the elbows under my control. That is, my wrist, forearm, and elbow is inside his, and on the other side the same, or my knee and shin inside my training partner's knee and elbow. Now, even if Brian put his hand on my knee and pushed my legs aside, even though he beats my legs, when it comes time for him to pin me, I can always move my legs back inside, as long as that space between the elbows is under my control. Okay? So even if he does a good job of blasting past my legs, as long as I'm in front of that elbow of his, when he tries to pin me down and hold me, I'm always going to push him back and put him back in guard. Okay, so that's the second big point. First point, you want your feet in front of your training partner's shoulders as much as possible. Second point, you want your elbows, knees, and shins inside his elbows. And if you can dominate the space between his elbows, it's going to be awfully, awfully difficult for your opponent to solidify and finish a guard pass. They can get close, they can get angles, they can get down low, they can do all kinds of things, but they won't be able to hold you down and pin you as long as you dominate the space between their elbows. So those are the first two big connection points that I want you to focus on. The idea that when someone goes into control our legs, we want to control the fronts of their shoulders. And as long as we can do that, you're going to be a menace to pass. If they get past your legs, then the next thing we have to dominate is the space inside their elbows. And if we can do that, they can get close to passing, they can even get over past your knees, but they're never going to be able to control your head and shoulders. And as long as my head and shoulders are free, the rest of my body can always catch up later, and you can always put them back in guard. Okay? So those are the first two big points with regards to guard retention. Now, the third big one, you have to have faith in your knee shield. The knee shield is the single best weapon that an older or less athletic player can use to help himself retain guard. It requires almost zero flexibility and joint mobility to be effective. It's the key because it enables you to push and create distance with just the strength of your legs, but not in a way that requires any kind of mobility. Okay, I don't need to invert, I don't need to high leg, I don't need to do any of those things. All I've got to do is track my opponent's hip with my knee. It's a relatively easy thing to do, even for people who lack mobility overall. So say, for example, if Brian goes for a simple knee cut, and in these situations, as he goes across, I take my knee and I track his hip. So that even as Brian goes into pass and successfully goes over my leg, we're in a position now where my knee prevents him from getting in close. And as he tries to finish the pass, it creates enough space for me always to bring my second leg back inside. As he goes across in the opposite direction, from here, we're always tracking our training partner's hip with our knee. If my knee is not there, he passes and touches his hip to mine, that's exactly when he passes. But if my knee is there tracking, when he goes to pass, even if he does beat my legs, there's so much space between his hips and my hips that my inside knee will always be able to recover. And from here, we can put this guy back in guard in some way, shape, or form. Now, as the older athlete, always what we're trying to do is create situations where we're finding our training partner's hip. Don't go in too deep. Just stay shallow right there on the point of the hip. So when Brian goes to work in these positions and puts stress on me, he's always being held out at a distance where I control him with my knee and shin. So that as he tries to push his way past my guard and work, it's so hard for him under these circumstances. Even if he did beat my bottom leg, the top leg is still there as a savior. So as he comes around the corner, I'm always going to bring my legs back inside. Okay? So, as an older or less athletic player, I'm going to say to you, if you struggle because of mobility issues, to use the classic methods of guard retention, the ones which I teach mostly to my younger students, rolling, inversion, and high leg. And these are difficult for you to use, and you always feel like when you use them, you're always a day late and a dollar short. I'm going to ask you to instead focus on 3 different areas that don't require any kind of mobility, no need for flexibility, but which are extremely effective. These are the idea of the soles of your feet inside your training partner's shoulders whenever they go to control your legs and gi pants. If they get past that barrier, I'm going to ask you to focus on dominating the space between their elbows, using your elbows, knees, shins, etc. And if you can keep that space between your elbows occupied by your elbows and your knees and shins, it's going to be very, very hard for them to actually finish a guard pass. They can get close, they can put pressure on you, but they can't actually control your head and shoulders and pin you. And as a result, you'll always be able to recover. And the third one, arguably the most important, is the use of the knee shield. Your knee tracking your opponent's hip at all times, so that when they try to close distance and get hip to hip to solidify a pass, they never get the hip-to-hip attachment they need. And so again, they get close, they come in, they put you under pressure, but you can hold them off, and always recover with your inside leg and put them back in guard. Now, what I want to do is just give you a general look at what the use of these 3 methods looks like in a training setting. So Brian's just going to come in using various methods of passing guard, and I'm just going to play around with those 3 methods so you just get a general sense of how they work and how they would be used in a more competitive environment. So Brian will start standing. As Brian comes out and starts getting grips on my gi pants, we're always going to start by gripping our training partner here at the cuffs. Okay, why is that important? So if Brian ever goes to switch to another grip, say for example, he wanted to grip my lapels, well, I control his cuffs, and so I'm always going to be able to get inside. Once he gets this grip, and I grip his sleeve cuffs, he's stuck with that grip. Okay, if he goes to any other form of grip, I control his sleeve now, and I can do whatever I want. This is where I place my legs. Okay, so when Brian grips me, the first thing I want to do is grip him here. Because that means, yeah, he's got a grip on me, but that's the last grip he'll ever have. He has to stick with that grip now. Because if he goes to move to any other grip, I control the sleeve cuff now, and now I can do what I want to do. Okay, so it's a good way of saying, okay, you got a grip on me, but you better be happy with that grip, because that's the last one you're going to get. After that, I control you now, wherever your hand switches to, I'm in control of your arm. Now, when they go to work in this position, what we don't want is them just blasting past our legs and then passing, and you're like you are beaten by the younger, faster guy. Okay, so we're always looking in these circumstances to take our feet over our training partner's legs, and from here get the blades of our feet right there in front of our training partner's shoulders. Now, Brian's just going to go to whip my legs around and move it around, etc. And you'll see that from situations like this, it's relatively easy for us to control our training partner's movement and stay connected to our opponent, keeping our body in, moving from side to side. Even as he runs all the way around my head, you're connected so well to this guy. It's so hard for him to break through it. And your loose, pliable legs give you excellent connection to this guy. Now, if for whatever reason he's able to flick my leg out and start going into stronger passing positions, I'm just going to bring my hands inside. I'm going to put them here inside my training partner's elbow. My second leg just goes on the inside like so. So now the space between his elbows is dominated by my shin and my wrist. So when Brian goes into pass now, it's very, very difficult for him to actually finish the pass. And if you just go from side to side. Now he goes back to the gi pants. So immediately, we're bringing our feet back over the top, getting our legs in place, throwing and holding this guy through. Now he lets go and goes back into this situation, and immediately our knees come back inside. And he goes to finish the pass. Not so easy from in here. Now we get to a situation where he starts coming down low, going into pass. We've got our knee shield in place. My knee tracking his hip. As he goes into finish, we're constantly framing inside his elbows. It's hard for him to get the finishes that he's looking for. And at any given moment, we can get back inside his elbows. If he goes across to the other side, same thing. And away we go. So there you have it. 3 very simple connection points that are easy for you to understand conceptually and highly effective. They do not require your ability to invert, your ability to show flexibility and throw your legs over or fold yourself up on your head and shoulders. People at any age can use these. Again, the idea of getting your feet inside your training partner's shoulders. The idea of getting your elbows and shins inside your training partner's elbows. And the idea of getting your knee inside your opponent's hip in the so-called knee shield position. Those 3 positions, in my opinion, represent the 3 most practical and effective ways that unathletic or older players can be highly effective with guard retention against younger, faster opponents. Now, if I could give one solid piece of advice for older or less athletic players when it comes to guard retention, it would be this. The scenarios where I see them have the worst problems and run into the most trouble are situations where there are prolonged guard retention scrambles, where the opponent is running from one side to the other, using their superior fitness, youth, and athleticism, speed, explosiveness, etc., to go from side to side. And you'll see the older or less athletic athlete wilting over time as they get tired trying to follow repeated movements side to side until a point is reached where they simply can't keep up and the younger athlete passes and the older athlete is pinned. The way I teach guard retention to older, less athletic players is one of the few areas where it's substantially different from younger competitive athletes. Most of the time I teach everyone more or less the same kinds of things. I just want everyone to get as good as they can, and I believe these are the techniques that make them effective. Well, guard retention is a little bit different. If someone simply lacks the mobility to invert, roll through, high leg, it's going to be difficult for them to do these movements for long periods of time. So what I encourage older athletes to use is a methodology of guard retention where they stick to those 3 elements that we looked at: foot connection to the inside of the shoulders, dominate the space between their opponent's elbows, and track their hips with a knee shield. And in addition, every time you successfully retain guard, don't leave it open so that the opponent can just switch from one side to the other, and keep using pace as a weapon against you. It's my belief that every time you finish some active guard retention, if you're older or less athletic, you must immediately seek some form of secure connection to your opponent that slows the match down. That's what you want. You want to slow things down. You want to get connection to your opponent. So what I'm going to encourage you to do is at the end of every interaction, every guard retention engagement you have with your training partner, try to finish in close guard or some kind of half guard connection, or failing that, some form of ashi, garami, or X guard. These forms of guard provide enough connection to you that you can be effective in stopping the movement side to side and going into counterattacks, so that you're not just constantly defending against a younger, fitter opponent who's eventually just going to wear you down and exhaust you. So how does this look? Okay, from a situation where Brian goes in and gets a hold of our gi pants, we've seen this idea that we can hook our feet in over the top. Okay, as he starts moving side to side, we don't want to be here forever, guys. Okay, as he starts to move down to the next level and start going into pass, when we start getting inside our training partner's elbows and he starts coming into towards us and passing, this is a good time for us now to start getting our foot here to the opposite leg and turning our body all the way up the other side, so we can drag this guy in and lock up a closed guard. The second you lock a closed guard, your opponent can no longer go side to side on you. He's literally locked between your legs. Now he has to stop whatever he's doing and open up your closed guard. Conversely, in a situation where he comes down low and we start to dominate the space in here, As he starts coming in towards us, if we get a good grip on our training partner in half guard, you have now, your opponent can't go side to side anymore. He now has to address what's happened to him. You're in a situation where now you can start attacking him. He's now in a defensive mindset as you start working from bottom half guard, start threatening to sweep this guy or what have you. Okay? So my advice to you is don't just put the guy back in guard and then say, oh, great, I put him back in guard. If this guy has any skills, he's going to keep whipping side to side until you get exhausted. And then it's going to be harder and harder with every passing second to keep putting this guy back in guard and retaining. So mentally, what I want you to focus on is every time you feel you've put the guy back and you've squared up to your opponent, lock him down in some kind of secure connection. The two most obvious ones will be close guard and half guard, where your arm is around your opponent's waist and you're hooked around his leg. That will immediately shut down his ability to move effectively in those positions. If you can't get that close, then at a minimum, from situations like this, at a minimum, you can go through and get him into ashi garami. At a minimum, you can go through and get this guy into X guard, okay? Because at least they provide some kind of connection and control the space between his knees. It's not optimal because you're not completely shutting down this guy's movement, but it's a hell of a lot better than having this guy out here free with a grip on your legs and you're trying to follow him side to side until eventually you get exhausted, okay? So how does this look in practice? Once this guy starts getting grips on us and we start going through and getting into our initial positions, as he goes to work in here, we're going to see at some point there's going to be opportunities for us to start forming some kind of inside connection on that training partner. And from here, we can go through, okay, now when he goes side to side, he's fighting us with garami. It's you who's in charge of events now. You're interrupting his balance. As he fights his way back up, and then from here, we find ourselves lower down on the floor. Working from here, you've got your knee shield in place. That knee shield is relatively easy for us to come up. And it's from these kinds of situations that we can start off balancing people. Situations like this, that we can start working down on the mat to knock this guy out of balance. Every time we see this guy coming in, working from situations like so, as he comes in low, looking to pass, and we're dominating the space inside, we're going to be able to get that foot all the way across that opposite hip and pull this guy through and lock up. And now he's got to address the closed guard. He can't do anything until he's opened up my closed guard and started passing. So I'm going to give you as a general tactical piece of advice. If you're the older, less athletic athlete, don't be satisfied with just squaring up to your opponent. Your opponent, if he has any skills, is going to keep going side to side until eventually his youth and athleticism will wear you down. Every time you square up to your opponent, and you've stopped his initial attempt to pass your guard, seek a firm form of connection to him. The best is close guard. Nothing slows someone down more than that. Probably second best would be half guard, because there's so much tight connection between you and your opponent, they can't go side to side anymore, and you're in a pretty good attacking position. Now they have to address the dangers that you pose to them. And if they're further away and these two are impossible, I would recommend X guard and ashi garami, because they give good connection to an opponent where they have to stop and deal with the threat that they're under or pay the consequences. So tactically, don't be satisfied with just this. Don't, when someone comes around the corner, just square up and think, oh, I succeeded, I squared up to him. No, he's going to throw your legs back, he's going to go side to side, and you're going to be fighting for extended periods of time. So instead, every time you go to square up on this guy, let's finish with some form of connection where now you're a threat to him. He's got to deal with that. As he deals with that, there'll be other forms of connection you can get to him. Okay? And as he starts coming down the body, getting closer and closer, you're going to find situations where you can drag him in and stop that cycle, where now he's not just moving around like a frog and tiring you out. Now you have control over him. Okay? So the best tactical advice I can give you is use those easy methods of forming connection that we looked at in the previous section, and then combine it with some tactical advice. Every time you square up to your opponent and you've stalled or prevented his attempts at a guard pass, form an effective connection to him. I'm going to recommend close guard, half guard, in particular half guard with a tight waist around your opponent, and X guard and ashi garami. Those are the four simplest ones for you to make use of. They will create a situation where at the end of every guard scramble engagement, you'll have a good attacking grip on him, and you have enough connection that he won't be able to just continually attack over time and wear you down. As we pointed out earlier in the video, the knee shield is one of the absolute most important methods whereby older, less athletically talented players can retain their guard against tough, younger, fitter opponents. The knee shield is basically a device to control distance. How does it do this, Brian? Okay, the knee shield is a combination of push and pull. My bottom leg is basically a half guard leg. If you just rotate just a little bit this way, Brian. Okay, my leg goes over his, and my foot is actively pointing down towards the mat like so. So that if Brian goes to move his leg away from me, there's resistance. Then, let's rotate this way. The top leg is the shield leg. It penetrates about a third of the way down the shin. Don't go too far across. That way your opponent can put weight on the top of your thigh and crush your knees together. This is not a good thing. We want a shallow penetration of the knee and your shin pushing into your opponent. So your bottom leg pulls and your top leg extends and pushes. But it doesn't extend so far that it slips on by. So you have to be disciplined with your knee position here. Now, what this means is that when Brian pushes towards me, his hip cannot advance. His chest can come forward, but it can't make contact with my chest. This means that I can always form a cross frame with my thumb just inside my training partner's bicep, second thumb just inside the elbow, and elbow up here on the collarbone and shoulder. So that when Brian tries to put weight on me, it's almost impossible for him to do so. You can hold this position for long periods of time because it's the strength of your legs holding him off. Your hands are much more cosmetic. They're just designed to shut down your opponent's lead shoulder and lead arm because those shoulders can cause problems with cross faces. So we always want to control that lead shoulder. So when he tries to come forward and cross face, it's quite difficult. Make yourself a little more comfortable by using the elbow. If you just push with a straight arm, you're going to get tired quickly. So make sure your elbow is bent, and it's the structure of your elbow that holds his upper body in place. Now, the most important element of pushing is done by this top leg. So when Brian tries to come forward, he can't do so. Now, if I didn't have my legs in place and his hip came around, and his hip touched my hip, that's when he would be pinning me here. I feel all of his weight now. So it's this hip, this right hip of his, that I want to kill by locking in just like so. Now, as he goes forward to put pressure on you, even if he runs around to the side, you're connected to him. My right leg forms connection. So when he tries to form angle, he can't. When he goes the other way, my left shin forms the connection. So he's caught between my two legs. When he tries to get upper body connection, he's shut out by my hands, my frames. So it's very, very hard for him to be effective in these positions in terms of positional advance. I have the ability to control distance with the right leg. When he goes backwards, the distance is controlled. With the left leg, when the distance comes forward, I'm in control. When the upper body comes in, that's controlled by my elbow and hand. And so you have total control over distance of your opponent. This is probably the single most efficient way for older, less athletic players to control distance between themselves and their opponent and guard retention. It doesn't require any inversion, zero flexibility, very little strength, and enables you as an older athlete to use your great virtue, which is isometric strength over time. And you can exhaust and frustrate even talented opponents using this method. Even if I should lose my bottom leg, the top leg will still enable me to preserve distance. Then from here, as he goes to pass, I'll always be able to get my bottom leg back in place. Okay? Now that's the basic structure of the knee shield. The next thing you need to learn is the relationship between the knee shield and the closed guard. Anytime your bottom leg comes out, you can place it on your opponent's hip. And if you can touch their hip with your foot, you can always put them back in closed guard. This simple but highly effective movement is the key element for guard retention and creating effective connection for older athletes. Okay, so here we are, knee shield in place, opponent pushing forward. I can always take my bottom foot and place it right there on my training partner's hip. The second my foot touches that hip, I can take my knee shield off now because my foot controls distance in a forwards direction. All I have to do now is switch my hips and bring them out to the side. When he tries to move back, he runs right into your back leg. And then, of course, into a closed guard. At this point, he's caught. He can't do any form of guard passing until he opens up my closed guard now. You are now in an offensive position where you can start going on the attack. He can't even think about offense at this point. He has to now open up your closed guard and start all over again, okay? So you can completely reboot the whole situation at any given moment from a knee shield. As he comes forward in here, all I have to do is take my foot and touch his hip. The second that occurs, we just push our hips out in this direction. So my hips go underneath his armpit and our feet just lock over his back. And it's so easy just to use this to put people back in guard repeatedly and frustrate them. Now they have to stop whatever they're doing, whatever grand plans they had to pass your guard are now shelved until they open up your closed guard. And the whole time they do that, they're under attack from your various strangleholds, arm locks, etc., etc. So it's so simple. First, the structure, bottom foot prevents them moving backwards. Top knee and shin prevents them moving forwards. Upper body frame prevents their cross face and head control. And as a result, when they try to drive forward, it's so difficult for them. And at any given moment, your foot can just go from half guard to full guard. Half guard, full guard. And then from here, we just push our hips out and square up to our opponent. Off that squared up position, we've locked up, and now our opponent has to react to the dangers of closed guard. He can no longer continue with his guard passing. I know it seems so simple, guys, but this simple and mechanically highly effective tactic is the key for older or less athletically talented players to hold off the guard passing attempts of younger, fitter opponents. It works like a charm at all levels of the sport. It's one of those moves that doesn't look spectacular. You go, I knew that already, or it looks so easy. Well, that's because it is. It's highly effective and works extremely well at all levels. As an older or less athletic athlete, this is going to be the key to your ability to hold guard against tough opponents for long periods of time.